A new supply chain attack hits Asus. Here's everything you need to know. Plus, Buca di Beppo was hacked, and we've got some new right to repair advocates. All that coming up now on ThreatWire. Greetings! I am Shannon Morse, and this is ThreatWire for April 2nd, 2019, your summary of the threats to our security, privacy, and internet freedom. Real quick, I would like to give a special shout out to my newest Patreon supporters this week, including Mad Mouse, Luke, Mail, George, Jason, Nihal, Cole, Richard, Vought, William, Kat, and Cole2 Arca Hearsay. I would also like to say thanks to everyone who contributes to my content on all of my alternative platforms as well. If you're not too cool of a fan of Patreon, but you want to support ThreatWire, you can hit up my website. It's snubzy.com/support for a bunch of different ways that you can support my free content. I will put that link down in the show notes. And of course, if you like Patreon, I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Now, on to the news. This story was first shared by Patreon David, so thank you so much, David, over on Patreon for supporting me. According to a post by Kaspersky Labs, a supply chain attack leveraging Asus's live update software was discovered back in January. Kaspersky will be announcing all of the technical details at a conference happening next week in Singapore, but in the meantime, we do have some information on this subject. So attackers were found to be actively exploiting a supply chain attack using Asus's live update utility, which is pre-installed on most Asus computers to automatically update components such as the BIOS, UEFI, drivers, and applications. The actual attack, which is dubbed Shadow Hammer, happened between June to November of 2018. So it took several months to be noticed, partly because the Trojan was signed using legitimate certificates they said came from Asus Tech Computer Inc., and they were hosted on the official live update domains from Asus. So Kaspersky also just added a new supply chain detection option to their scanning tool as well, so this helped in discovering the attack. Asus was informed back on January 31st. Now, while Asus now knows about the issue, upon first discovery and disclosure, Asus denied that the attack came from their network or that its servers were compromised. Asus has also been very unresponsive about the issue, and nothing has been issued to their hardware customers when this was first announced. Now, since the attack used legitimate signed Asus certificates, which has not been invalidated by Asus, mind you, anyone with access to those could continue to sign malware with digital certs, making them seem legitimate. The file was called setup.exe, and it looked like an update to the live update tool, but it was actually just a copy of an older update tool setup file with malware coded in. Kaspersky doesn't believe that the attackers had access to all of Asus's infrastructure, since the attack used the same binary for the code instead of using new ones each time Asus made a legitimate update. Now, real updates still got pushed to customers alongside the malware, so it was very hard to detect. This attack targeted specific MAC addresses, which were found by users' network adapters, of which were hard-coded into the malware. Kaspersky found over 600 hard-coded MAC addresses in the 200 samples of malware that they looked at, so it's possible that there are more targets than just those. While specific MAC addresses were targeted, the malware was still distributed to many more. The full amount of affected users is not known, but Kaspersky users accounted for at least 57,000, though the company estimates it's possibly affected over 1 million. US-based Symantec also found at least 13,000 customers of their own had the malicious download on their computers. Now, once the Trojan was downloaded, its malware would look for any of the target MAC addresses. If it found one, it would send a message to the attacker-controlled server to then send over additional malware for those victim machines. Researchers at firm Skylight Cyber posted a list of 583 MAC addresses late last week, which they were able to reverse engineer out of Kaspersky's tool. Now, Kaspersky believes this attack is the work of advanced persistent threat attackers, similar or maybe being the same criminals that had to do with the 2017 ShadowPad attacks. Kaspersky has a tool available currently as an executable that you can tell if you are targeted in this attack, but you can also use an online tool as well well, and I will put those links in the show notes for you. Days after the release of this information, finally came an update from Asus. They implemented a patch in the latest version of Live Updater, it's version 3.6.8, which now includes end-to-end encryption, new security verification mechanisms, and updated their server to end-user architecture. A diagnostic tool was also released by Asus that can check for affected systems. Now, if your system is affected, Asus also recommends just backing up your files and restoring your operating system to factory settings. Right to Repair, which advocates for users to have the authority to repair their own technology without being punished by the law, just hit the news again in a very big way. First off, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has also announced her run for the Democratic presidential campaign, published a Medium post detailing her plans to level the playing field for American farmers. Her first plan is to support a national right to repair law that would enable farmers who own tractors or agricultural equipment to repair them without John Deere or alternative manufacturers' permission. John Deere has been in the news here and there, and we have talked about it right here on ThreatWire due to their stance against right to repair. This doesn't work well for farmers who, if any of their equipment breaks down or needs an update, would need to wait for an authorized agent to come out and physically fix their product before it could be put back into use, sometimes putting a farmer out of a job for weeks at a time. Not only does this negatively affect their time on the job, but the authorized agent could cost so much more than it would to fix a problem themselves. Warren explains in her outline that companies put diagnostic software on equipment that must be unlocked with a code from a repair agent. So some farmers have gotten around this with jailbreaks or third-party firmware. She continues by stating that diagnostic tools, manuals, and other repair-related resources should be made available to any individual or business so a manufacturer could not monopolize the repair process. Another positive for right to repair advocates is Apple's genuine parts repair documentation, which Motherboard obtained a leak of. In the docs from April of 2018, Apple seems to be handing over diagnostic software, repair parts, training, and information to third-party repair companies. This is very surprising given the great iPhone battery debacle of December of 2017. I'm sure anybody with an iPhone kind of remembers that. The documentation would allow Apple to comply with future right to repair laws by offering all the parts, the training, and documentation needed for anyone to repair their components, not just Apple stores. Now, neither Apple nor the third-party companies mentioned in the doc offered a comment on the information. One company did respond to Motherboard, stating that they do have premium status with Apple, whatever that means. The problem is this still does not offer individuals who own these phones the right to repair them. It only opens up repairs to large chains who specialize in mobile repairs and reselling. Although obviously that would probably be cheaper than going to Apple if your product is not in warranty. Now, lastly was Ting Mobile's announcement that they are moving to fully support right to repair legislation, which makes Ting obviously stand out from any other MVNO who actively lobby against it. According to Ting's announcement, a survey conducted showed that 78% of respondents did not even know what right to repair is, and after being educated on the subject, over 60% responded that they would prefer to fix their own devices instead of buying new ones. Ting also introduced a campaign this week for folks to share stories about phone fails to further the conversation. Now, how do you feel about right to repair legislation? Is it a cybersecurity risk like so many manufacturers want us to think, or is it justifiable? Let me know. Before we hit story number 3, I wanted to say thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. If you are interested in getting access to a slew of extras and a bunch of perks, even if it's just $1 or $2 a month, you still get access. Hit the button to become a Patreon supporter because it does all help, and it shows me that you appreciate the work that I'm putting in for this show. Also, a big thanks to our Hush Puppy perk level patrons for sending in their fur baby photos. I love them. Keep them coming. They're so cute. According to a press release made by Earl Enterprises on Friday, several different restaurants across the United States were involved in a breach of their payment card processing systems. Earl Enterprises oversees several different chains, including Planet Hollywood, Buca di Beppo, and Earl of Sandwich, along with one-offs like Mixology, Tequila Taqueria, and Chicken Guy, all of which were affected in the breach. Over 100 total locations were impacted, mostly of which were Buca di Beppo and Earl of Sandwich. And of course, Earl Enterprises considers customer payment card data a top priority, and they deeply regret that the incident ever occurred. Basically the same thing that we always hear after a large data breach. Earl Enterprises started an internal investigation, and they are working with federal law enforcement along with 2 cybersecurity firms. The company found that attackers installed malicious software on point-of-sale systems at these restaurants, which was designed to capture card data such as credit and debit card numbers, expiration dates, and sometimes cardholder names. This happened between May 23, 2018 and March 18, 2019, just 2 weeks ago. Now, this did not affect online payments, just point-of-sale in-person payments. Now, Brian Krebs of Krebs on Security first reported to Buca di Beppo that he found 2 million credit and debit card numbers being sold on a popular cybercrime forum called Joker's Stash back on February 21st. Cards on Joker's Stash were indexed by city and zip code, along with being searchable by expiration date and card issuing bank. Krebs found that this stash of stolen cards, which is called the Da Vinci breach, matched the locations of Buca di Beppo stores across the US. While not confirmed by Earl Enterprises, this could mean that the breach hit 2 million and is actively being sold. Earl Enterprises does recommend customers review credit card statements for fraud and consider placing fraud alerts or security freezes on your accounts. They also included a location dropdown which lists affected restaurants. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below. Let me know what you thought of all of these top stories. I'm Shannon Morse, and I will see you on the internet.